everybody, today I'm going to be showing you how to do a pen, a standard wooden pen, simple as it can be. I've done quite a few pens, I sell them, so I'm making them all the time, and I've done a few videos and they've covered the basics of it, but there are a lot of tricks and secrets to pen turning that will make all the difference between a good pen and a really great pen. So I'll be going through as much as I know today in detail, so sit back and enjoy this video because it will be long. Here's what we're looking at for the actual pen itself. I have my pen kit from Craft Supplies USA. Now let's stop for a minute and talk about where to buy pen kits. There are a lot of different places. The ones that come to mind are Craft Supplies USA, Penn State Industries, and Woodcraft. Those are the ones that are popular. But there are a lot of other places where you can purchase them. Woodcraft, I used to purchase them from Woodcraft, but they're just a little pricey. And while they are great pens, and they're probably higher quality pens than Craft Supplies, Craft Supplies I find has a decent, good pen for a really affordable cost. The pens that I usually buy and make are a Slim Style pen kit from Craft Supplies USA. The pen kit itself costs $175. The wood that I'll be using is Kingswood. This should turn out pretty nice. I've never turned Kingswood before, but it does have some really nice grain to it. Other things you will need will include a pen mandrel, a set of bushings for your pen kit, CA glue, I use medium, and activator. The drill bit for your pen kit, the Slim Style pen kit, requires a 7mm drill bit, a bandsaw, a drill press, a lathe, a couple other things that aren't absolutely necessary but will really help make a great pen are a deburring tool, an X-Acto knife, and a pen center instead of an ordinary live center. The first thing you're going to want to do is cut down your two pieces of wood for your pen. So open up your pen kit, and there should be two little brass tubes inside. Some pen kits will only have one brass tube. You're going to take these two little brass tubes and you're going to put them on your pen blank. I'll put one here, and I'll make a mark maybe a 1/16 of an inch more than the little tube. If you want the grain to line up on your pen, which most people will, you will take your other brass tube, put it to that mark that you made before, and mark about a 1/16 of an inch ahead of that one. Now I'll take a speed square and make a line where my mark is. Now we can cut at those marks on the bandsaw. I've actually rigged up this tiny little sort of a crosscut sled for my bandsaw, and this little brace here will just ride along the table, and I can put my piece of wood here and push it through. And I made this solely for pen blanks because I end up cutting up a bunch of these at a time, and it's easier to have something more reliable like this rather than just trying to freehand a cut. And before I cut this, I forgot one thing. Where the two pen blanks will be, make a long horizontal line there so you won't lose the orientation. Now that our pen blank is cut into the two pieces we'll need for the actual pen, we're getting ready to drill out the hole to fit this little tiny brass tube in the actual wood. So to do that, I made this little jig about a year ago, and it's worked pretty well for drilling out pens. What would be really better for drilling out a pen blank though is a self-centering drill press vise. You can buy those at a lot of different wood turning shops, woodworking shops. And I actually don't have one, so I'm kind of stuck with this little 2x4 that I ripped in half with a little notch in the middle. And what I'll do here is I'll just place the pen blank just in here, and using a couple of clamps, I'll just lock it in place. And we'll take this whole jig over to the drill press and drill it out. Another thing that will help is at your center point, take an awl and just make a little point there for the drill bit to find itself in. So I'll put my drill bit in my drill chuck here, and I'll lock it down. And we can turn this on and drill the hole. A jig like that does not give you perfectly straight holes through your pen blanks, but it'll come close enough, and most of the material on these two pieces is going to be turned away anyways. I'll be gluing in these brass tubes using a medium CA, although epoxy would work very well too. I never had great luck with epoxy, especially recently, and my advice too is if you're going to use epoxy, don't get the cheap one. Go with Loctite 5-minute epoxy or name brand one, because I used off-brand epoxy before and I've ruined a lot of pens using that. The CA glue or epoxy will bond a lot better if you scuff down the shine of the brass tube with some light grit sandpaper. I'll just run a few beads of this glue along the brass tube. Here's a little trick. When you push the pen blank down into this little hole here, by the time you get to the other end, there's hardly any more glue left on the brass tube. So take a little bit of CA glue and just put it on the inside at one end. I'll spread this around a little bit, and as I push it in here, I'll give it just a little twirl to spread it around. And we'll set that aside and do the other one. Now you could use an activator and just spray the ends real quick, or if you really want to, you can spray the tube or something and push it in like that with CA on the other bonding part, but I don't usually do that because activator will tend to make the bond between the tube and the wood pretty brittle, and it doesn't hold up as well as if you just let this sit and dry. Now since we cut these blanks a little oversized, the brass tube is not flush with the ends of the wood, so we need to sand this down. I use a disc sander attached to a faceplate that I made for my lathe, but there is actually a tool for this. I don't know the name of it, but it kind of looks like a drill bit, and it goes in there and it just chips away at the surface until it hits the brass tube, and that'd be good for this. But I just sort of freehand it with the disc sander, although I am thinking about making some sort of a platform here to give me a nice square surface when I'm sanding this. Now usually now that they're flushed up, you can see that there's a bit of dried epoxy on the inside of the tube, so using an X-Acto knife I just kind of scrape that stuff out of there, and I'll use a deburring tool and just sort of scrape it even more, and this will give me a nice fit over the mandrel. Okay, to mount the pen on the lathe we use a pen mandrel. This is so that the pen blanks will always be centered. Otherwise you might start carving into that little brass tube if it's even just the tiniest bit off. Alright, now I'll put on a bushing. And let me see if I can find those two pencil marks that showed me how this grain is supposed to line up. Okay, so I'll put on my one pen blank. I'll put on another bushing. I'll put on the other pen blank and line that up as best I can. And I'll put on my last bushing, put on two spacers, and normally I would use this little nut here and I would tighten it down. But I've learned the hard way that if you over tighten this, your mandrel rod will bow either way, and that'll cause the whole thing to be off center, and it just ruins pens. I've actually had a few pens that have not came out because of that. So instead I'll be using a precision pen center, but let me tell you, if you were normally going to turn a pen with just this little nut on your mandrel, you would pull up your tailstock with your little point in it, and you would just bring it up in the little divot at the end of your mandrel and apply a little bit of pressure. Well, this thing, I really don't like doing that because it kind of dulls down the point on my live center here. And I don't like using this little nut because it tends to bow the pen mandrel quite a bit. So to solve that, I won't be using this. I will be using this. This is something called a precision pen center. And basically what it does is instead of applying pressure to the mandrel rod, it applies pressure to the bushings, so it will still tighten them down, but it won't over tighten and destroy your mandrel. So I'll place this in there. You just bring it up over, lock that down, and now I can apply as much pressure as I want within reason. And that's already pretty tight, so I'll lock that, and I can bring up my tailstock. The actual turning of a pen is extremely simple. It's not that hard at all. Basically, you're just going to rough it in, get it round. Then I like to bring down these ends here to the diameter of the bushing, and then I sort of round it over the whole thing, make it look pretty. My two go-to tools for pen turning are a skew and a roughing gouge. Well, you could use a roughing gouge, but this actually isn't a roughing gouge. This is a spindle gouge. It's something called a low-fluted spindle gouge. And I like this a lot for pen turning because I don't have the wings on either side to get in the way and get caught on the bushings and other things. So I have a lot more control with this, but you can use whatever tool you're comfortable with for the actual turning of this. My speed is at 1500 RPMs, but you can go a whole lot faster than that. The reason being is that these are such small pieces that the number of rotations per minute are going to be tinier than they would be on, let's say, a bowl. So you can put this up however quick you want. For sanding, I like to use some foam-backed sandpaper because it's very comfortable to sand while turning with this stuff, and it doesn't usually heat up, or it probably does, but you can't really feel it through the foam, so it's nice. I use these grits from 180 all the way up to 600. At this stage, we're ready to start finishing. Now, let me just say, finishing a pen has always been just a pet peeve of mine. And the thing with me with pen finishing is that you're going to be using this a lot. It's going to wear off. So wax finishing, oil finishing, I would never use that on a pen. I used to use a mix of polyurethane and an acrylic top coat, polyacrylic finishing. And I found that works really well for finishing a pen. And I've recently been using CA finishing quite a bit, so that's what I'll be doing today. I use a medium CA for finishing, and I go up to about 6 or 7 coats with this. You know, I'm kind of confused. I've only been doing this with a CA finish for maybe the past 20 pens I've done, 10 pens. And I've seen people put on like 3 coats, and I've seen people put on like 7, so tell me in the comments if you do pen turning and you do CA finish. Let me know how much coats you put on. I'm going to turn my lathe speed nice and slow, maybe about 800 RPMs, because I've learned from keeping it too fast it sort of spatters up, and if you spray that with activator it'll dry like that. Alright, so the way the CA finish works, or at least how I do it, is I will hold the piece of paper towel underneath the pen, and I will just run a bead along and spread it along.
Do not hold the paper towel on and try to make it smooth, because that glue will dry and it'll grab the paper towel and you have now a paper towel stuck to your pen. So just spread it on, take your activator, quick spritz, sit back for a little while. Do not try to put on a bunch of coats at once. I really let it dry for a while in between, probably longer than I need to, just so that it's not soft when it's all done, because you want it to be completely hard. So just a bead of CA, spread it around quickly, spray it with activator, and away.
If you watch very carefully, you may have noticed that each coat I moved up a little more on the sheet of paper towel. And you probably can't see that, but there are a bunch of lines where I held the paper to the pen while I was finishing, and I move it up one, and then I count how many to make sure I've done however many coats of finish I put on. I just put on 7 coats of CA. Another thing, these metal bushings can stick to the pen blank quite often, and in a few types of mandrel kits you will get HDP plastic, sort of like funnel shaped bushings, and if you have those, use them because it doesn't really stick that much to those. I do have them, I just forgot to put them on. So what I will do if that happens is I'll use my X-Acto knife and just score a line, maybe just a little proud of where the pen blank meets the metal tube, and it'll, most of the time it will snap at that point. I'm kind of debating whether or not I should do a matte finish or a high gloss finish with fine grit sandpaper. I kind of think I'm gonna try a matte finish today. And worst case scenario, if the matte finish doesn't look good, I'll just continue straight into micro mesh sandpaper and turn it into fine high gloss finish, which also looks nice. I just kind of thought I'd try something a little differently today.
Okay, here I'm just sanding off any high spots left in the finish with 600 grit.
So I'll be using micro mesh sandpaper. Micro mesh sandpaper is basically extremely fine grit sandpaper. It goes through 15,000 all the way through all these grits to 12,000 grit sandpaper. Always wet sand with this. It'll lengthen the life of your micro mesh, keep it fresh and everything. And turn up your speed full blast. Here we go.
The general advice for sanding with micro mesh is to spend the most amount of time on the first grit and the last grit, and all the grits in between you just want a quick rub on all the surfaces and leave it.
Alright, buff that up, and I'll show you what that looks like right off the bat. Just like that, nice and shiny. Okay, so now we can take this whole thing off the mandrel. And these two are kind of stuck together. There we go. And that's kind of stuck together. So, there we go. Place that right down there. And do the other one. And you're probably thinking to yourself, well, now you're going to lose the orientation that it was in before. So to fix that, I've already remembered what this looks like, because the grain on this is kind of squirrely, because it kind of curls like an S, so I'm pretty confident that I can line it back up when I'm done. There's that. That's number one. Okay, now I'll just flush up the ends with the X-Acto knife. Alright, so I finally got myself a pen press. So if you don't have one of these, you can use your lathe or even a vise, though I would not recommend it. First step of assembling the Slim Style pen kit is to press this writing tip here into your pen blank. So I'll center that up and press it in, I guess. Oh, look at that. This is my first time using a pen press. That is pretty cool. Okay. Next step is to press in the twist mechanism. So I'll set this to about there maybe. And this twist mechanism has a gold part of it, and you're just going to press it into the line. Though I like to press it in just a little bit before that line. You'll see why in a minute. Okay, just like... So I press it up just a little bit before that line, because when I put in the ink refill and twist it, I like to twist open the pen and see if the ink will come out all the way. In this case, it's a little short, so I'll take this back and press it in just a little more. Probably enough. Okay, maybe just a little smidge more. That was probably just too much, figures. Okay, let's see. Might have a weird looking pen here. No, actually that's not bad. As long as it goes back in all the way, you're probably good. Okay, so now we're gonna put the pen clip on and the very top of the pen. Now here we have a good opportunity to hide up anything we don't want to show and put it right underneath the pen clip. In this case, I have an awkward little pocket of air just beneath the CA finish, in between that and the wood. So I'll cover that up with the pen clip as best as I can. And let's set this to about there maybe. Line it up. Make sure I'm going to cover up that little spot right there. And drive it home. Okay. Last step is we're going to slide in this little center band over that, and that's it. And it all works. Thank God. Okay, there's the finished pen. Again, this was Kingswood finished with the CA finish. Hope you enjoyed this video and you got some tips and tricks from it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. It might be available on my eBay store. I will list it. I don't know if it will have sold or not by the time you visit my eBay store, but there will be other pens and that type of thing on there for you to buy if you'd like to. Link in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.